Item number 14, page 88, consider implementation of the drainage utility district.
I believe you were handed it, received this in your packet last meeting, but I just wanted to make sure that you had it on this meeting. In our retreat that we had 2 summers ago, I initially introduced the concept to you about a drainage utility. And just to be brief, and I'm sorry I've got a cough drop in my mouth, my voice was a little off today, the allergies were getting to me, so I apologize ahead of time. What a drainage utility is, just to recap, would potentially be a third utility of the city. And it is created by the legislature to deal with stormwater. Stormwater is being regulated more and more by the federal government, which delegates that to the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. And as time goes on, again, it's becoming more and more regulated. As you drive anywhere else that you go in your travels, you see the silk screening construction sites. It holds back all the soil. That's mandated. That's stormwater related. I'm just trying to think of things that you might happen to see. That's a big one. You see big retention ponds in different communities that you may visit. All that's mandated by the federal government, and it's going to get even more so as time goes on. A lot of cities have a stormwater or a drainage utility. The correct term is defined by the legislature is a drainage utility. And I'll call it stormwater utility, interchangeable terms. Many cities have this utility. Hudson Oaks, as I just handed that out to you, just recently adopted it in September. Brand new. You can read that at your own leisure, but they saw the need in it, that they felt like it was necessary for them going forward. A number of cities have them. I've got another summary that you had previously that just went through the different cities that had it. And of course, it was May of 2012, so it's a bit dated, but it's the only thing I can find. So the question is, why do we even need this? And I know that's a question on everybody's mind. Why do we need this? Well, I think one of the main reasons that we do need it, and this is very contemporaneous, is these new FEMA maps that have come out. These are the newest FEMA flood maps that Chief pulled from a meeting that he's recently gone to. If I could bring these up to the council. I'd like to show you why this is necessary. And I've brought some weights to help hold it down. I think these two are the ones I'm most important. So this is sorry, I ran out of weights. This is out west of the city on 180 towards the river. And this one isn't as important. This is Pollard Creek. The orange shows expanded flood zones. In this shows where flood zones exist now that did not exist before. This is in the city. This is Cantex right here. You can see the flood zone that used to not be at Cantex is in Cantex now. This is along the Crystal Creek tributary. So we have a lot, well, depending on your perspective, we have new areas in the city that have expanded on the new FEMA flood maps. These are dated September 15th of 2016. That show expanded flood areas within our city. One of our largest employers in the city.
And the other ones, those are what, off of 281 north?
Let me see.
Or is
Yes,
it
sir, that's
281
all.
south?
It's 281 runs through here, and this is just residential areas. This is the southwest section of town, and this is going north, just to kind of help with the.
This is,
What's that?
MH3
seven,
379, yes. And that's
that's the old gas plant, that's the cemetery.
yes. And all these orange areas show expanding floodplain. Same with that. If those get in your way, please let me know and I'll remove them. So that's one of the first reasons why we need to consider having this drainage utility. Another reason we need to consider having the drainage utility is we have a tremendous amount of deferred maintenance. These canals were constructed in the, I believe, Kelly, in the, you know, they're constructed in the early 70s, I believe?
I believe so.
Early 70s. And they've reached probably the large part of their service life. So they're going to need some preventative maintenance and probably some major reconstruction. And I was talking about the canals. So the Crystal Canal being one of them, tremendous amount of deferred maintenance, needs major reconstruction in the downtown area. Significant funding is needed to reconstruct and address issues with those canals. I talked to communicated with our city attorney, city engineer, excuse me, and he concurred that there were significant projects that needed to be undertaken with drainage related. Another reason why we need this is because of our streets. As we rebuild our streets, as we spend money on our streets, drainage also needs to be addressed. So it'll make our street money, our street repair money go further, because when we do repair the streets, we can also address drainage at the same time. So we have drainage money, taking care of drainage in concert with street repairs. So when we go in, repair a street, or rebuild a street, that money that goes in to repair the street goes further, because the money that you would have had to use to do the drainage is coming from a different fund. Talking with our Public Works Director, another reason we need a drainage utility is because we have many culverts that are damaged throughout the city. That stop up, block drainage, don't allow things to drain freely as they should. This is particularly bad in the southwest area of the city. According to our Public Works Director, there needs to be culverts reset and what do you call those?
I call them head wall, but concrete ends.
Concrete ends put in, so when people cut short, pulling trailers, driving, and hit them, they don't smash them down, and it'll last a long time. And then we're investing in the future so we don't have these kind of issues happen again and again. Another reason we need this is so that we have a drainage, so that we can invest in a drainage master plan. The city manager showed me that this was originally budgeted in 2008, 2007, 2008. The drainage master plan was budgeted at that time. However, that was around the time that the economy there was a downturn in the economy, and we simply couldn't afford it. So a drainage master plan has been contemplated for many years, but there was no funding. This will allow funding to complete that drainage master plan. And some of the things that a drainage master plan will address is it will give us an inventory, allow us to inventory and analyze our existing storm drainage system. I don't believe we have a good understanding of what we have. And analyzing our channel system, analyze all the canals and so forth, creeks that we have. It'll determine design storm flow for different storm events, because we have a 5-year, according to our city engineer, we have a 5-year event, a 25-year event, 100-year event, and so forth. So they'll be able to model what we have and what will happen. And as most of you remember, this past spring we had I don't know what year event that was, if it was classified as a 25, 50, 100, I don't know. Whatever it was, it flooded City Hall, it flooded several of our businesses, and that is an impediment to economic development. We need to be able to stop that kind of thing from happening, because businesses, when they see that, when they see our infrastructure failing like that, it is a detriment to somebody wanting to come here. Back to the drainage master plan. It will allow our city engineer to review existing FEMA maps and hydraulic models, and I just showed you the FEMA maps and some of the issues that we're facing there. They'll prepare hydraulic models for various storm events and proposed drainage projects. In other words, they'll figure out what we need to be doing. They'll identify large flood control projects, which most likely are dealing with those canals. But most importantly, they'll start identifying small localized storm drain projects. For example, there's some problems in Bluffview Estates. In talking to the Public Works Director on Redwood Drive, there are issues right now that need to be addressed that we simply don't have the money to take care of. Where was the other place you were talking about?
I was talking about the Blackburn addition over here in the southeast, where drainage just can't get out into the streets. It all stays in the backyards.
Is that behind the junior high?
Yes. Okay.
And so, by having this drainage master plan, that'll also give us cost estimates for all these projects. How much is it going to cost for us long-term to fix? And very valuable information for us to have going forward. And the city manager, in his wisdom back in last decade, put this forward, but was not able to fund it. So the thought has been there, it's been on the table, it's been needed, but we couldn't fund it. And last but not least of why we need this is for grants. Well, why do we need a stormwater utility where we can get grants? Well, quite frankly, we need this for the matching part of grants, because grants require a matching part from the city. Frankly, we don't have it any other way. So for us to get hazard mitigation from FEMA or wherever else, we're going to have a matching part of the grant. Having a drainage utility will allow us to be able to match our part of the grant. Okay, so that's my short list of why we need it. So assuming you want to move forward, what do we need to do? Well, we need to have council, will need to authorize 2 public hearings. One of the public hearings is for adoption of an ordinance allowing us to have a drainage or a stormwater utility. The second would be to authorize a public hearing for the fee schedule. That'll allow public to come in and have their say for pro or con or whatever it may be. There's also publication requirements that I'll talk about in just a minute. Actually, I'll just go ahead and talk about it now. My notes are a little out of order. I apologize. There's a minimum 30-day requirement on publication. So if you wanted us to move forward, and if you wanted us to move forward now, we would have to start publication this Saturday. We'd have to go ahead and put it in the paper this Saturday. And we'd have to publish it 3 times. Doing that, assuming we have regular council meetings, the first time that we could have the public hearings and you'd be able to consider it would be December the 6th. We counted it up, and that's when it would be December the 6th. So exactly how much money are we talking about? We have approximately 6,200 utility customers. And the number that I thought would be a fair number for us to start with, our initial phase would be $2.50 a month across the board, whether it be Lance Howerton or Walmart or whomever. $2.50 across the board. This will allow us to build up a fund balance so that we can take it to the next step. At any rate, that would make it $15,500 a month, assuming everybody paid it. And in a year's time, that would be $186,000. Which would allow us to move to the second phase. The second phase would be the engineering studies that we talked about earlier. In talking to our city engineer, he believes an estimate somewhere, I originally told you between $200,000 and $250,000. And talking to our city engineer, he believes he can get it done for $100,000 to $150,000. And the financial component, excuse me, the financial component is somewhere between $30,000 to $50,000. So we're looking at somewhere between $130,000 to $200,000 to do this project, which, based upon the money, the $2.50 a month that I put out to you, we could afford this project in a year's time. And actually, we could start it in 6 months' time because we have enough money, we kind of have a running start at it. Now, I want to also point out to you that if you choose to do this, it's a minimum 5-year commitment. Once the council decides, if you decided to move forward with this, we're hooked into it for 5 years. There's no going back, there's no changing. A future council couldn't change this for 5 years. We're in it for 5 years.
John, are we hooked in at the $2.50 for 5 years, or just the program?
No, ma'am, and that's a very good question. I'm glad you mentioned that. What would happen in the second phase, the $2.50 is just enough for the utilities to support itself. When we had the second phase, engineering studies and all that come in, they would come back and meet with council. You'd be totally involved in the process, and they would make the recommendations on how to set the fees. It'd be based on the impervious cover, a business that had a lot of parking lot, a lot of parking area, a lot of concrete, a lot of asphalt, they would pay more versus somebody who had a residential house would pay much, much less. Somebody who had a small house with just a driveway would pay the least. And you have a lot of options on how you would be able to structure it, much like you do the water rates. You could, you have a lot of options. If you wanted to exempt, potentially, if you wanted to exempt certain classes, you have that ability. But that would be something that you could ask the rate consultant about. What I'm bringing to you tonight is just getting the program off the ground. And then once the rate consultant and the engineer do this, what we're doing tonight gets us to where we can afford them. Then they come in and they present, and then council dictates how they want to set up the fee schedule and all that.
Okay, thank you.
You know, so, you know, if Hudson Oaks did that, did the same process. They had a basic price and then they changed it, the higher rate Or do you know?
No, they had a consultant come in and they set it at the rate that they had it right off the bat. Now, other cities have done it the way that I'm proposing. One of them was Prosper that did it the way that I'm proposing. And there are others because the thought is, the theory is to have this utility fund itself without having to take money out of the water fund or general fund, something like that. Intent is for it to fund itself.
On page 96, you've got exemptions already built in there for county and school district. Do we have to give them exemptions?
If you could just bear with me for just a moment. I have the law up here. I believe that you do not, but if you'll give me just a moment.
Yeah, there's certain statutorial exemptions, and then there's certain
Optional, yes, sir.
optional exemptions, so. And the statute says governmental entity or person described in subsection B may be exempt. The state, the county, municipality, or school district.
Right. He's correct. Under the statute, they may be exempt, so it's optional.
And this is just me. What the county has inside of our city limits is less than what, quite a few churches and others have like that. The school district creates a tremendous amount of runoff with their properties. The heat we take whenever we raise taxes is because frequently the school district has raised their taxes before us. And, the people that continually run either at nonprofit or a loss are not exempted in what we would be going forward with this evening. And no, it's not just because I pastor a church. The county gets tax revenue off of people, the county operates, and I don't see that giving other entities that are able to tax, that we bear a ton of brunt as a city whenever we do a tax increase just to keep our streets going. I don't see that it makes sense to give those governmental entities a free pass on this, especially if the other entities that give to the community freely are not going to be exempt right out of the gate.
Yes, sir. And if you'd indulge me for just a moment, I want to run through the exemptions with you just for clarification. The city manager was correct. May exempt is the state, county, municipality, and school district. Shall be exempt is property that is wholly sufficient and privately owned drainage system. So in other words, somebody keeps all their drainage on their property and doesn't allow it off, then they're exempt.
Yeah, like Walmart?
No, they just detain.
They just-
Yes, they do detain, but they do release.
Property held and maintained in its natural state until such time that property is developed and public infrastructure is constructed and has been accepted by the municipality. In other words, property that has not been developed is exempt from this utility. Now you may exempt property owned by a religious organization. You also may exempt a cemetery if the cemetery is closed to new interments and does not accept new burials.
But since our cemetery is municipal, we would exempt it on ourselves as a municipality.
Also, property is exempt from drainage charges. Municipal Housing Authority.
So is that saying, John, that the 6,200 utility customers that you mentioned earlier, that's total without any exemptions.
Yes, sir. That's just total, yes, sir.
Just, you know, I look at the different school campuses, the amount of asphalt that they have, some of the neighborhoods they're in that already have drainage issues. You know, that's a sizable chunk of what goes and pours onto the streets. That to give that an exemption, you know, on top of which, you know, they fund off of property taxes, off of real property. And, you know, I'm thinking about some of the larger church parking lots. Church of God has a good-sized parking lot. First Baptist has a good-sized parking lot. And, you know, most of the churches in town are either operating at a break even, or they operate at a little bit of a loss. You know, they have people at the end of the year that maybe stroke a check to help them break even. That, you know, but they're continually pouring back into the community in benevolence and in food and in helping with utilities and things like that. That this would genuinely place a hardship burden on entities that help alleviate some of the poverty and try and do other programs to help bring the community up. And that exemption's not in here. But I see two other entities that they can tax on people within this municipality. They make decisions. And you know, if we exempt them, I don't see exempting them who get to tax people, and not exempting the people that continually run at a loss and try and pour back into the community off of people's free will offerings.
Well, excuse me, this was just an example ordinance. Certainly you can add anything you want, and it wasn't,
Right.
This was an example.
Right.
You know, just to add to what you said, I see water bills monthly, and I see the churches certainly helping with that. You're absolutely correct. And anything the council wants to do as far as add or that is no problem. That ordinance that we have is just an example that can certainly be altered as you see fit.
But it needs to be altered before you publish.
Yes, and yes, it needs to be altered before we publish. So it need to be, if you want to move forward, you need to alter it.
It's page 2 of 2 attached to the resolution that we would move forward on tonight as Exhibit A, the drainage charge schedule, which would be where we would propose that 2.5 going forward and everything else. So
You do that at a later time after you adopted this one.
right, but the wording in this is what would go forward in the publication, would it not? Because
But you
this
have to
is
publish the entire ordinance, I think, in the publication.
Yes,
so
but
all 7 pages.
yes,
Okay, and that's what I'm saying. These exemptions are already in
Right.
what's
It has
published
to be taken out.
that would go forward.
well, if you want, excuse me, I didn't interrupt.
No, go ahead.
If you, whatever the council wants to do, I'll go over and change it tonight, and then we will publish whatever you want. So, what I'm saying is, this was simply just a draft ordinance that we put forward, knowing that we were gonna have to change it, because we figured that y'all were gonna have some changes, quite frankly.
And I mean, especially during this initial phase, I think everybody should pay the $250. Even the churches, everybody should pay the $250. Now, once the study comes back, then I think that might be the time to put in place the exemptions. But starting out, other than the exemptions that are mandated by law that we have to give, I think everybody should go on ahead and pay the $250. That's just my thought.
Well, the ordinance itself just establishes the authority for the council to establish exemptions when they're setting the rate schedule, correct? John, under section 9, as XX on page 91.
Bear with me just a moment, please.
Can we publish them without listing any exemptions?
Yes. In other words, you leave it open to the council whether or not you're gonna do exemptions
Right.
down year to year. I mean, that schedule of rates can be changed from time to time. So that's where it kind of threw me in. I don't think we have to
Oh, yeah,
determine
I
what the
understand.
exemptions are right now.
And also, the reason I didn't, on the section, on page 2 of 5, I didn't know what section it was gonna be codified at, so I kind of left that open as well. So I left it open to be edited, because I didn't know.
And under our code, the editors are authorized when we pass an ordinance to properly codify it by putting the numbers and so forth. And so as long as the correct substance is here, it can be codified by our code editors.
So my understanding is $2.50 has to be published, or it can be changed before we enact it?
For two separate hearings. First is the hearing, first you establish your ordinance. Then you come back with the same notice procedures, the 30-day notice and so forth, I believe, for setting your rates. So you probably wouldn't be able to set rates until January sometime.
No, you can do it the same meeting. You can do it the same meeting.
Okay, is that your proposal? I thought you were coming back for rates.
No, sir. Under the resolution that accompanied it,
Page 2 of 2, which is page 96.
Okay.
That's where John's got the 250.
yeah, on the
I thought we were just
resolution.
going with the ordinance first. You're asking for them to set the schedule of rates as well?
Yes, what I'm proposing is to have 2 public hearings on December the 6th, if they want to move forward. One is for the ordinance, public hearing, to adopt the ordinance. And then the second public hearing would be to set the actual charges. And if you look at that TML, thing I gave you, they said you could do both of them at the same time. Yeah.
How far are we into this program before we go through the engineering study and come up with realistically what the fees are gonna be?
Well, I just don't see how. Do we have an inventory of the lots already done?
Well, we're just gonna put it on the water bill. So anybody that has water service with us, they would qualify for this. So it's just all the people who have water service with us.
This, if I understand right, and this might answer yours too, Wayne, what John's been saying is, what we approve tonight kicks us into the next stage. That as long as we approve that there, that allows us to go forward with the $250 per month to create a balance so that we can fund the engineering and all that.
No, sir.
Okay.
What would happen, okay. What would happen tonight, if you wanted to take action, what you would do is authorize us to publish the ordinance with any changes that you think was necessary. Authorize us to publish the resolution setting the fees with anything that you thought would need to be changed. Setting the public hearings for each of those for December the 6th. And we would have to publish it 3 times. So then on December the 6th, we would have to have public hearings at that time. We'd have 2 public hearings. At that, at that time, we would bring the ordinance before you, it would have been published 3 times according to the law. And at that time, should you choose to adopt it, you'd have your public hearings. And at that time, if you choose to adopt it, you would adopt the ordinance and the resolution. And then you would set a date that you would want us to start. You'd have to give us some time to put the software together, and all that. We'd need a little time, probably 3 months maybe, just
So saying an effective date of March 1.
or something like
You
that.
got in here, the drainage charges take effect on January 1, 2000.
That was just a.
So all you're asking us for tonight is the further opportunity to have discussions on the utility, and that the adoption would come at a later date then that when it happens.
Except he has to publish what the ordinance would look like, what we're proposing.
Right, so I guess we need to go, I'm sorry.
We would have to amend it like we were saying, we don't have to define what,
But
who
there,
gets
but there's no
exemptions this
commitment
time.
to,
Give us the authority to do that.
If on December sixth, the majority said no, then that kills this as a utility, Wayne. It does not start the utility tonight, but what we do on December sixth will either start it or kill it.
But to make the public aware, if I'm understanding it, we take what you've given us here, and what we want to change in it is we don't want to define exemptions at this stage, but we want our ordinance to give us the authority to do that at a later date.
No, we need to define it now because we've got to,
George had said we could have.
We can do it at different times, and I think that was initially contemplated. Did you initially talk about adopting rates at the same time you passed the ordinance?
yes,
I wasn't aware of that.
yes. Okay.
I thought you had to have an inventory and all that.
But I would say until the study comes back and they recommend their rates, that the
You gotta have
exemptions be
them
put in
before
place
you
at
do
that
any
time.
rate.
no.
Okay, my question is, and I have no problem with the shit about the exemptions. My question is about the $2.50. Does that have to be published? If we came back on whatever day we come back to have this public, December 6th, I guess it is, and had a different calculation of formula to have this money where it doesn't actually come out an additional $2.50 out of their pocket, can it be changed at that time?
My understanding is we'd have to republish that. We'd have to, that's my understanding is we'd have to republish that. So you could adopt the ordinance, but then you'd have to republish the resolution.
Because I'm looking at a different calculation to come with that, where it wouldn't affect the citizens, that I could go over with and show you what I'm talking about. But instead of adding an additional $2.50 to the bill, if I can incorporate it into the regular bill,
Well, no, it has to be broke out as a separate utility.
it can be, but that's like, could you hand me that sheet here? It's like, just for an example, it's like, Tyler, they take out 6% of the water utility bill. To the, instead of $2.50, if I looked at and did a recalculations on our increase in the water and what's coming in and all that, to go that route, that's what I'm just saying. Instead of going 250, if I proposed that and it was accepted, that's what I'm asking. But if we did that and it wasn't accepted, we'd have to go another 30 days and we'd just stay with 250.
Yes, sir, we'd have to be published 3 times.
Okay.
And Mr. Reagan, in looking at the resolution on page 2 of 2, those exemptions, particularly 4, 5, and 6, those are actually mandated in the law that we have to give those. Because it says those property owned in a county which municipality described by local government code section blah, blah, blah is located. That is actually in the statute that we have.
So it's not a maybe, it is a
Yes, sir.
you must, and you just take it on the chin.
Yeah,
No, and I'm not sure which
No,
municipality.
it's not your fault. I blame it on Austin.
But see, that's a particular municipality, and I'm not sure which one. I don't think that's us.
That would apply to, 4, 5, and 6 do not apply to the city because they're not over 500,000. Anyway, those cover housing districts that are in a town over 500,000. Those would apply anyway. I think this is a sample resolution from one that just wholesale copied the state law on that.
It actually,
Go ahead, but it doesn't, whenever you talk about exempting churches and schools, that's not in this part right here though.
no, it's not.
So there's no attempt to exempt them here.
Right.
Where are you coming from on that?
And that's my problem,
You want them exempted?
is that it's the school districts get to tax people, and so do counties.
All right, if you don't want them exempted, they're not gonna be exempted.
And
in
so,
this proposal.
yeah, and that's my point, exempting them, but then going on ahead and placing an additional burden on churches, which at the $250 a month, that's not a burden. But what happens when the study comes back, and you've got a church that's got 20,000, 50,000, 80,000, however much parking lot, now they're gonna get hit rather substantially And these are people that continually do help people in the community, and you know, they don't operate at a profit. They don't get to just come in and raise taxes. And how many times does the city council take a beating and people come in? The school district's going to tax us. The county's going to tax us more. And everybody expects the municipality to just go, well, then let's not do anything this year because everybody else is hitting you in the nose. But all those entities get operate for free, even though they generate massive amounts of runoff inside of our municipality, that now our citizens end up paying for those other governmental entities twice, directly and indirectly. And so if we're gonna put an exemption for those others, I think it would be really mean to not give the exemption to the religious and charitable organizations that already do so much for so many other people.
What comes to you from time to time?
Again, sir, the exemptions came straight out of the statute.
Right, and I understand that, Mr. Moran. But whatever resolution we approve, of which that is the Exhibit A, that is referenced in Section 2 on page 1, that's what gets published, and that's what goes forward to December 6th.
Yes, sir.
And I would rather see us either add churches in now, or strike these others now, as we go forward, then,
Just for clarification, you cannot strike these because they're mandated by law, those exemptions.
1 through 6 have to be exempt.
okay? And whatever the wording is by law for us to put churches in, and other religious and charitable organizations, however we need to word that.
There's the statute that defines exactly what it is. It says.
And I've read it, but I don't have it memorized in my head.
Yeah, I've read it. That's why I looked for it.
But whatever the proper clause is on that we add that as a number 7 then.
It's a religious organization that's exempt from taxation pursuant to 11.20 of the tax code.
That's 552.053.
Yeah, section D.
All right, sir. We can certainly do that.
Okay. Because, you know, to answer the initial comment when we started the meeting, when Mr. Moran first proposed this back in June of 2015, I was not very complimentary to Mr. Moran's idea. I thought it was absolutely ridiculous. I thought it was an additional burden, and I thought the city did not need it. And as we continued to get inundated, and I started seeing city crews having to go and clean up entire streets because of chunks of other streets being washed off down the hills and all that, and you know, I'm serious, Ryan. You need to put a sign that says, you know, bring your beach chairs for Lake Chamber of Commerce every time it rains. You do. Charge a 20-cent admission fee to anybody who can get to the parking lot. Because it's ridiculous. A few months ago, you know, the Police Officers Association was posting on Facebook on a Sunday morning at church time telling people not to come into town because the drainage was so bad that they felt it was unsafe. How much does that hurt commerce when your Police Officers Association posts on Facebook and tells people don't come into our city because the streets are flooded and it's not good for you to come in? And as I started to see these things, I realized that our drainage is wholly inadequate for what we are as a city now. It is wholly inadequate for where we want to be as a city as we go forward. And Charles, you're right. We have some streets that are horrible. If we do this, as we fix those streets, it does a couple things. It quits pulling money out of the public works portion of the general fund to fix all of this other stuff that nearly every other growing city in North Texas has adopted because they saw the value of it. So quit shortchanging Public Works' money that they need for other public works. If the citizens were to vote a bond or something like that to fix $2, $3, $4 million worth of streets, this starts putting the things like curbing and other things in place so that we don't have water getting underneath the streets, we don't have water eroding from underneath, so that every 3 to 5 years now we're back with Public Works going out with their ASCO Noble truck, patching up with I call it lukewarm patch because it's not fully hot, but it's not cold. And then the next time we get a good gully washer, what happens? It's all washed out again. And this is a ridiculous waste of money because we didn't have the right pieces in place that as we fix something, it stays fixed, and thus will bring up the overall quality of our community. And over the long term, Charles, this actually saves the city money because then we're not wasting $100,000 every 10 years on a neighborhood to fix streets that could have been fixed for 30 or 40 years because they had proper drainage, because they don't have that much traffic. And I got no qualms with saying I'm the one who's asked John for the last 8 months. John, when are you going to get this before us? When are you going to get this before us? I don't mind if people want to hate me for it. That's fine. It's $2.50 a month that everybody pays to start putting the pieces in place so that the fixes we make hold. And that's all I've got, Mayor.
You said everybody pays, but we've got exemptions.
Well, unfortunately,
So
like I
not
said,
everybody.
unfortunately, we can thank Austin for making sure that cities get punched in the mouth yet again. Way to go, Austin.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I'm of the opinion that we've got changes that need to be made to this. And I would rather see what we're voting on in total than here tonight where I'm not sure what all we're looking at. So I'd rather table till the next meeting and have a document put together that answers these questions.
If I might address that, Mr. Mayor, if you could take a break for a few minutes, I could go correct these and add in everything that I believe that you want. It would take me just a few minutes.
Or can we go into executive session
You come back to
on
us.
point 16?
Can we take a quick break before we do that?
That's your call.
For oatmeal? 5 minutes, we'll be back.
Okay, I'll hurry.
John.
Oh, hey, you got, sorry, I backed that into you.